freedom. The truth shall make you free. Whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin, and the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth ever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. John chapter 8, verses 32 and 34 through 36. As this passage stands, I have not been able to make sense of it. No man could be in the house of the Father in virtue of being the servant of sin. Yet this man is in the house as a servant, and the house in which he serves is not the house of sin, but the house of the Father. The utterance is confused at best, and the reasoning faulty. He must be in the house of the Father on some other ground than sin. This, had no help come, would have been sufficient cause for leaving the passage alone, as one where, perhaps, the words of the Lord were misrepresented, where, at least, perceiving more than one fundamental truth involved in the passage, I failed to follow the argument. I do not see that I could ever have suggested where the corruption, if any, lay. Most difficulties of similar nature have originated, like this, I can hardly doubt, with some scribe who, desiring to explain what he did not understand, wrote his worthless gloss on the margin. The next copier took the words for an omission that ought to be replaced in the body of the text, and, inserting them, falsified the utterance, and greatly obscured its intention. What do we not owe to the critics who have searched the Scriptures and found what really was written? In the present case, Dr. Westcott's notation gives us to understand that there is another with a reasonable probability of being the true reading. The difference is indeed small to the eye, but is great enough to give us fine gold instead of questionable ore. In an alternative of the kind, I must hope in what seems logical against what seems illogical, in what is radiant against what seems trite. What I take for the true reading, then, follows in English thus: Every one committing sin is a slave, but the slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remaineth forever. If then the Son shall make you free, you shall in reality be free. The Authorized Version gives, Whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. The Revised Version gives, Every one that committeth sin is the bondservant of sin, both accepting the reading that has the words of sin. The statement is certainly in itself true, but appears to me useless for the argument that follows. And I think it may have been what I take to be the true reading that suggested to the Apostle Paul what he says in the beginning of the 4th chapter of his epistle to the Galatians, words of spirit and life, from which has been mistakenly drawn the doctrine of adoption, merest poison to the child heart. The words of the Lord here are not that he who sins is the slave of sin, true utterly as that is, but that he is a slave, and the argument shows that he means a slave to God. The two are perfectly consistent. No amount of slavery to sin can keep a man from being as much the slave of God as God chooses in his mercy to make him. It is his sin that makes him a slave instead of a child. His slavery to sin is his ruin. His slavery to God is his only hope. God, indeed, does not love slavery. He hates it. He will have children, not slaves. But he may keep a slave in his house a long time in the hope of waking up the poor slavish nature to aspire to the sonship which belongs to him, which is his birthright. But the slave is not to be in the house forever. The father is not bound to keep his son a slave because the foolish child prefers it.